welcome to the Social Angle, a podcast that helps promo pros gain an edge in the social media realm. I'm Vinny, and on this episode, I am joined by Sam Moses, Chief Soctologist at Socrates Custom Socks. I love that name. To discuss how he got into the sock game, ways you can use social media to grow your brand, and much more. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, and appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, for sure. What's the weather like down in Boca Raton today?
It's pretty good. We don't like to complain, to people from up north about that if it's cold or not, because it's relatively cold versus really cold. So it's a little cold for Boca weather, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's funny. I've interviewed a bunch of people already this year from Florida, and they tell me, "Oh, it's cold. It's cold,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Well, it's relative. I understand that when it's mid 60s in Florida, that's considered cold. But here in the Philadelphia area, we've had some pretty mild weather. Today, it's supposed to be in the 50s. We were supposed to get some snow this morning, but we didn't. We haven't had any snow this year. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed because I do like snow.
Yeah,
At least one snowfall. But today it's just cloudy and it's supposed to be in the 50s.
that's great.
Um,
That's great.
yeah,
I'm
almost
uh,
50, 60 weather like you guys are experiencing.
Yeah, I'm actually from Toronto originally. I grew up there. And if you would tell people it didn't snow, that's actually an indicator that it's actually colder in a way, because it's actually gets like freezing cold and it
Right.
doesn't snow. But this sounds good up there. The weather sounds nice.
All right. Again, we're going to be talking to Sam Moses about his business, Socrates Custom Socks. But before we get into the questions, Sam, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you found yourself in the promo industry?
Sure. So I'm the founder of a company, Socrates Custom Socks. We only do custom socks for companies who are using the socks for trade shows or events or employee giveaways or client giveaways. So it's generally a B2B sale. It's a B2B service. And we started this business about 4 years ago. We were in retail. I had retail stores up in Canada, high-end retail where we were selling neckwear. And I noticed that in the neckwear business in that store is a very high-end menswear store. The type of customers that we were getting was a very specific type of customer, generally an executive, a very specific type. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice? We have hundreds of thousands of people walking around downtown Toronto in the financial district. Wouldn't it be nice for the store to offer a product that everybody can purchase, not just the executive?
Right.
So at that time, I just got married. My wife was in advertising. We started our own brand called Socrates, where we produced custom socks. I'm sorry, we produced socks for the store,
Okay.
like in stock socks, and we brought it in, and people loved it. And we noticed right away that everybody was coming in. I like to say from the entry level worker to the CEO of a bank. Everybody could come in and actually buy these socks. They were a big hit. Colorful designs, polka dots, stripes, animals, sports. Like we were doing lots of different types of designs, and the volumes that we were selling in that store were extremely heavy. We had a Christmas tree that we put in the front of the store that held 700 pairs, and there were days where we had to replace that tree multiple
Oh,
times. So
wow.
you can
Okay.
imagine, yeah, you can imagine the volume. And it was incredible to see because women were coming in buying for themselves or for their significant others, and it was a tremendous time in our business there. At that point, what happened was companies started coming to us because it's the financial district. So companies started approaching us and saying, "Hey, who makes these socks?" So we would tell them that we're the manufacturer, and they would say, "Hey, I'm going to a trade show. I need 1,000 pairs, but I want it with my logo and my label and my everything." So we had designers at that time. Who we were freelancing for us, and they would design the socks, and the company would approve it. They're obviously we learned the business of how picky they were with their designs, and then we would ship it to them. And I kind of was like, wow, what an interesting business where you get paid and then you produce versus
Right.
my entire life was producing and then trying to get paid, right? So
Sure.
I was like, this is interesting. And then we really transitioned out of retail and went directly online. And when we went online, I realized that definitely what we want to focus on, our part of the puzzle that we want to focus on, is the logistics on the back end of the deals,
Hmm.
where we can figure out a process, and our process is a 7-day turnaround time. So there was a lot that went into that, where we could figure out a process that is really, really solid. And then have the distributors, via ASI, the distributors come onto our program and use it. And we developed over the years, few years now, a very streamlined process where the designer, sorry, where the distributor comes to us, we design the socks for them, or they design it on their own. They approve it, and 7 days later, it shows up to their door, perfectly Pantone matched. And that process of going from, okay, delivering socks to delivering socks in 7 days, and producing in Italy, and that whole entire discovery process to make that process, to make that solution, that's what we're focused on. So it was a good fit with the distributors because it's like we can focus on what we do best, and they can focus on what they do best, which
Sure.
is deal with their clients and,
Right.
and their programs.
Right. So how long have you been in this industry?
So it's been about 4 years now. This is our
Okay.
fourth year. We were in retail for many, many years before that, and this business kind of just took off. We have clients all over the world. We ship all over the world, and we're always continually working on two things: the product, offering different types of dress socks and athletic socks and wool and retro tube, knee highs, and all this stuff, and working on the process, making sure that that 7 day turnaround time is really, really tight, and making
Right.
sure that
Right.
the program to the distributors is tight.
And I think that I like what you said about um, being able to focus on everybody. You sell a product like a tie. It's a very niche, apparel
Yeah,
product.
yeah,
Not many people wear ties, and in the last
no,
10 years, 20 years, even there's been a huge move away from formal wear into casual wear.
yeah,
So ties are yes, if you're selling other things, ties are probably a great item to have. But socks, especially in the last, I've seen 5 7 years, custom socks have really taken off. I'm a big fan of custom socks. I love branded socks. I wear them all the time. Uh, so to me, I feel like that is a win for you. You
yeah.
decided, hey, why limit ourselves to such a small segment of the population when you can actually sell a product that is geared toward everyone?
Yeah, no, it was a huge eye opener, like to see the different types of people coming in from all over, and it doesn't really have an income, limitation to it, whereas $125 neckties does. So it was amazing. It was actually it changed the whole way we look at our business, and it was really amazing because for the first 7 8 years we were doing it one way, and then one day, we just changed it, and the entire store became way more accessible.
Right, right. Again, we're talking to Sam Moses from Socrates Custom Socks. Now, we kind of touched upon this already. Why you invested in custom stocks socks? I think it's fairly obvious why you did that, and it's certainly a good business decision. But how are what are ways that distributors can sell custom stocks?
So the best way that we find is that they are already doing kind of like a bunch of items for the client, and then it's a great add-on. Whether you put it in the kit because it's super easy to put into a box because it's like it's really flexible, the product, right?
Hmm.
Or a standalone giveaway at a trade show. It actually is probably at this point the number one trade show giveaway because everybody needs and uses socks and nobody
Hmm.
looks at it like a low value product. It's a very high value product, right?
Sure.
So it sits in the customer's drawer, the potential customer's drawer. We've had customers or distributors tell us that 2 3 years later the customer called them back and said, by the way, those are my favorite socks. I still wear them and I still use them.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of people, the end users, coming to the distributor and saying, "Hey, I need socks," and then the distributors finding us because we have a very good program. But it's also the distributor saying, "Hey, have you tried socks? Because if you haven't, it's a very, very good product for you to use at trade shows or even employee events. Like to give
Hmm.
out a pair of socks to your employees. Everybody's talking about it the next day. It's a communication thing." So it's actually a fun item, and and
It
and it's
is.
colorful and it's fun, and it has a label that makes you look like you're Nike. So it's a fun, easygoing item, which is also doesn't break the bank.
Right, and a nice quality sock will certainly be remembered by the end user for sure.
Definitely,
I have
yeah,
socks
definitely.
that I really love, And when I put them on, I have a pair of socks I've had probably for 5 or 7 years. And every time I put them on, I'm like, these socks are great.
Yeah.
I wear them all the time. I never get a hole in them, and I wear them probably once a week, and I remember that brand all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
those socks were a great item for branding. So again, we're talking to Sam Moses about his business. Also, we're going to be talking about social media now. Sam, let's talk social media for a bit.
Sure.
So when it comes to social media, this is one of those questions that a lot of people ask me for this show. What are some recommendations on standing out? This is tough. How do you stand out on social media in 2023, especially with saturation? Everyone's competing for eyeballs. What recommendations do you have?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, you have to have a strategy going in as to what you're trying to achieve. I mean, are you using social media to get leads? Are you using it just for kind of like, brand presence so that when you do get a lead from somewhere else, that they go there and you look alive? There's two things that I always suggest. One is consistency. You have to be consistent and you have to be, somebody has to be monitoring it because people are asking questions or people are interacting and you got to be pretty quick to respond back. I mean, the world of social media moves so fast that you can respond a day later and it's already kind of dated. Your
Right.
response is somewhat dated. So we have somebody focus on that, and that's number one for me is consistency. And number two is value added content. Try to not just splash out there your features and benefits, which you've said for the last 100 posts. Try to engage them in a way which is value add. Talk about something that where these socks can be used and how that can actually help them. Versus just being like 7-day turnaround time, Pantone matching. Like you kind of have to be an advertisement without being an advertisement. So
Sure.
talk about how it can benefit them. We talk about ROI a lot. Like,
Hmm.
you're already going to a trade show, you're already spending $10,000 for a few extra $1,000. Wouldn't you like to get an extra 300 people to your booth? Wouldn't that be worth it? And then, when you think about it from an ROI perspective, it almost becomes a no brainer. You've already sunk so much into this event. Why not, spend a little bit more money, but actually generate the traffic to the booth, right? Like, it's like buying a really fancy car and not putting the gas in, right? So,
Right.
so we talk about that. We have a lot of content around that. I try not to just talk about our benefits because it's too advertising. And as me and you go through our day, you can imagine and I can imagine and we know how many advertisements are we being exposed to,
Sure.
and how much can we actually absorb. And I think in a way a lot of people have just learned to kind of like block it out. Like we almost
Hmm.
just block out advertisements, right? So I think for us and for everybody, if you're thinking of starting on social media and you want to get going, value added content. Think about the customer. What do they need? Because they
Sure.
don't need to know. They don't need to be sold every second on something, right? They need to know how this can help them and what this can do for them.
Right, I agree 100%. And I like that what you said about consistency. I always preach that if you're going to post once a week, once a day, be consistent with what you're
Yeah.
doing. Make sure that you engage people who are, they're tagging your brand. If somebody's tagging your brand and asking you a question, you have to get in there and absolutely respond, engage with your potential customers. It's imperative that you get in there and be part of the social media conversation. Also, the value add. I can't tell you how much I still see, not only in this industry but all industries, about how much people are still trying to sell on
Yeah.
social media. You can't do that. Like you said, value add, educate, entertain, have some sort of content that is going to help you stand out from the rest of that noise. And I think you nailed that perfectly. Now I have to ask you, are you able to uh, you know generate any leads for your business through social media?
We do. Yeah, we do. It's not the biggest percentage of our leads that we get from social media. It's more SEO online, but we do get leads from social media. Actually, we get a lot of leads from social media by us and our staff just engaging with other people, right? Like
Hmm.
we take an interest in other people's businesses, and we comment on their posts and all that. And then through our profile, they're like, "Oh, you do custom socks? I actually have an event that I'm going to, and I wouldn't mind getting some information on that. And no obligation. We send them the design board, and then they end up purchasing, or not purchasing. Most of the time they do, but we take an interest in other people, and we're active on there. And that's kind of like lead generation, but it's almost like you can call it passive lead generation.
Sure.
Like, we're just going out there and doing and being engaging with other people because we're taking an interest in them. And then kind of like, oh, I'm going to an event. It's not a
Right.
bad idea.
And I think that that's a great point, because I always say, I make I use a quote from Field of Dreams. Just because you build it, like in the movies, like build it and they will come. Social media doesn't work that way.
No,
You can't just have a presence on social media, say on Facebook, and you post content, and you expect, oh, I'm going to post this, and all of a sudden my phone's going to ring. No, it doesn't
no,
work
no.
like that. You have to go
Yeah,
out there. You find out where your customers are. Where are they? Where are they? Or which
yeah,
platform? Engage with them, and
yeah,
eventually they're going to find out who you are, what your product is, and if you have a mutual beneficial relationship there, then you can strike that up. But you have to be engaging on social media as well. So do you have networks that you have more success with than
yeah.
others?
The platform that we get the most success on, and we have a little bit of success on all of them, but the one that we get the most on is LinkedIn, definitely.
Okay.
It's just the platform where I guess our customers would be. And again, that's the platform where we find we're able to engage in a professional manner properly
Hmm.
with customers, and not only customers but potential customers. And that's definitely the platform that we've seen the most success. But back to your point, you made a good point. You can't just throw everything up. It's not about checking boxes. It's not, you check your boxes and you're like, oh, I put up my profile, I put up a picture, I did everything. Okay, I'm just going to sit back and wait for things to happen. It doesn't really work like that. You have to go out there, and it's like planting the seed and then watering it as you go, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
you can't just, come back 10 years later and hope that a tree's there, right? So you have to work it. You got to work it. So
Sure.
I always tell, we have a staff here that, and part of the staff work on our social media, that it's you're going to have to keep doing it every day you have to dedicate time, and you might not see the results of that right away. It's not like that, right? It just, over time, it's slowly kind of like, you know marginally builds, and then
Yep.
eventually you have something there, right?
There's no magic bullet for social media.
Yeah, there's no, you can't, right? You
I
can't
got a
just,
million of these, the witticisms I'll just throw out there. But yeah, you have to nurture it. You have to work at it. There's no easy way to do it. You have to be consistent, and you just have to spend time. You have to say to yourself, "Hey, we need to put time into this, time and
yeah.
effort, and eventually you're going to get there."
Yeah,
Try a
and
lot
you
of
have
try.
to you have to believe in it,
Yeah.
because if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be posting it. I see other brands, there's 6 months between posts, or
Right.
it's almost better just not to have it at that point, because it just looks too dated, and you're not engaged, and it doesn't look like you care about it. So it's
Yeah.
just not going to work.
You and I are on the same wavelength. I always tell people it's better to not have a presence on a social media platform, rather than have a presence where you haven't posted anything or updated your page in a year or 2 years. If you have a
Yeah,
Twitter account and you haven't posted since 2014, and I still see it all the time. Get rid of the account.
just get rid
You
of
know,
it.
you know,
Yeah,
deactivate it. It doesn't look good when somebody goes to your website, clicks on your Twitter account, and sees that you haven't posted since 2014. Not good. It's not a good look.
not
You
good.
want your social media presence to be active. You want to see things on there like we talked about earlier, about value add. You don't want to just sit there and sell, 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 because when you look at people who post content that is salesy, what are you going to see in the comments? Likes. Nothing. You're not going to see any
Nothing
likes,
ever. Yeah,
no comments, no
right,
shares. Nobody cares. That's
right.
noise. Nobody wants to see that in social media. Again, we're talking to Sam Moses of Socrates. We're talking about growing your brand on social media. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll either get to them while we're doing this live stream or afterwards. Now you mentioned LinkedIn as a platform that you have the most success
Yeah,
with a product like yours. I would think that Instagram would be a very popular and potentially a lead generating platform, because it's visual. It's built for a product like yours. Now, do you have any success at all
yeah.
on Instagram?
We do, yeah. So Instagram has been great for us in another way where we have a customer, we delivered the socks to the customer, and then there's an engagement after that where the customer then posts and tags us and we tag
Sure.
them. And so we post their socks sometimes and we tag them and we say, hey, it was great working with Microsoft or whatever it is. Or of course the distributor. But the point is that there's an engagement that goes back and forth there. So that actually works pretty well for us.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about user generated content. Uh, I think that's huge when you're a supplier or distributor and you have um, recipients of a promotional product that they absolutely love, whether or not they love the quality, the look of it, or it's part of an experience. One of the first things that they're going to do is they're going to go to social media.
Yeah.
And do you see that a lot with your product?
Yeah, we see it a lot. Yeah, breweries, who order and, these tequila brands and definitely tech companies and we get a lot of movie shoots, like movies and TV shows,
Huh.
which is very interesting. And
Doesn't
they
surprise me
they
about the
both
breweries because I would say 75% of my branded stocks are from breweries.
Yeah,
I
breweries, they're crazy.
I
Yeah,
love
no,
going to
they're
breweries.
very proud of their brand and they have a
Yeah,
following behind their brand. So when you're in the bar, I guess, and the socks are there, it's an easy purchase for the
for
for the
sure.
for the customer. So yeah, no, and they're really good at branding. Like some of these
Yeah,
breweries have, I'm like, wow, their branding is really impressive. Like you opened
right.
a bar and you actually did a cool brand,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
plus when people are drinking alcohol, they're more likely to open
Yeah.
up their wallet and buy that merch. And
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that too. I've come home with a bunch of merch. I'm like, why did I buy
Yeah.
this?
I always buy the mug, I'm like, why
Yeah.
am I buying this? Do I need a mug right now? Like,
Yeah. Do I need
yeah.
another mug? I have 100 mugs in my but beer glasses, I have a whole
Yeah.
separate room in my house where I store
Yeah,
like
the hats,
yeah.
I'm into that, yeah.
So, okay, Sam, I have one more question, and then we're going to get into an informal Q&A. So, any final advice for people who want to stand out on social media with their brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the first thing that you should be doing is building kind of like a content calendar. Have some kind of strategy behind how you want to post and what you want to post and the messaging behind it, but don't be too rigid in that. Like sometimes you have to go a little bit off script sometimes. Number one, and then stick to it as much as you can with your posting, but also try to engage other people. Try to be out there a little bit. Try not to think so much about not try not to do everything just to make a sale. Just try to kind of like
Hmm.
engage people, try to enjoy the platform for what it is, produce really good content that's valuable to other people. Think about the end user and how they would actually benefit from the post. Like the end user
Right,
doesn't need to know your prices, like at this moment. Like
right,
they just don't, right? If they wanted your prices, they would come to you and get your prices, and anybody can come to you and get your prices in 10 seconds, right? So they don't need that. What they need to know is how does your service actually help their life? And if
right.
it doesn't, you come up with a story how it does, right? So yeah, that's I think the best way to start, and don't overthink it because it has to be a journey where you can't every day after you work an hour see some
Hmm.
want to see a result right away. It's going to take time to build. It's like a snowball, right? In the
Right.
beginning, it doesn't look like much, but as it builds, I know it's weird for a guy in Boca Raton to make a snowball reference, but
Well, you're from Canada, so
yeah, from
that's okay.
Canada, yeah, I get away with it. So as the snowball builds, then it's like, oh wow, I can't even stop this snowball. This is huge,
Right,
right? So
right.
yeah, and there's a tipping point there, right? There is a tipping point. You just gotta get there, but you can't be too obsessed day to day of, oh, I'm not moving my snowball. You just have to kind of get it going.
Sure.
Yeah,
See, I love that advice. My advice would be, create content that's entertaining,
yeah.
fun.
Make people laugh. Yeah,
Yeah, you can create content that has nothing to do with your business.
yeah,
And if you help people stop the scroll, if they're scrolling through their feeds and you stop them with something that's fun, interesting, entertaining, that has nothing to do with your business, they're still stopping and they're going to remember your brand. So I always tell people it doesn't have to always be work related. Have fun. A lot of people go to social media to get away from business. So if they see business stuff, they're just going to keep scrolling by. If they see something
right.
fun and interesting, different, they're going to stop and they're going to remember. So Couple of thought-provoking questions. This is a new edition. I want you to think on your feet. Tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. So, got a couple questions for you, Sam. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What was the biggest failure in your career, and what did you learn from that experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Um, I think in the early days, I had a lot of failure surrounding some early businesses that I started where I was young, and I definitely made some mistakes, just with the way that we dealt with suppliers and the way that we dealt with the customers,
Hmm.
and we took things for granted in the early days. And I think what I learned from that is that a success or failure is never really final. Your
Hmm.
journey, you can recover from big failures in the beginning, or relative failures in the beginning. And number two is how really, important it is, the customer journey, and how important that process is for the customer. Because it is, what I learned was how hard it is to actually get a customer. It is hard, and it's
Sure.
harder to even keep the customer. So now I've become super focused with my team. We have about ten people working with us. um, I've become super focused on the customer. I call it the journey versus customer service. Service means that, after something went wrong and they came to you and then you service them. I'm more into like customer experience. Like, how do we
Hmm.
make sure that this experience for the customer is an amazing one where from the beginning they're really excited to work with you? So
Right.
I think that's what I learned from the early days of coming out of business school, starting a business out of the gate.
Yeah, I think that's it's all about experience, and
Yeah.
I think back to the some of the things I did when I was younger and how I conducted myself in my professional life, and I've learned a lot, and I certainly have the experience to know better than to do the things that I used to do. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like you said it perfectly, the journey, your journey is long, and you're going to learn a lot during it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I love that answer.
Yeah,
All right, my sec.
in your early 20s, everything seems like that's the end. You're 25 and you made a
Oh,
mistake and
right,
that might
right.
be the end of it. And then you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. There's a lot of things that are going to happen here
Hmm.
to start actually being successful. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time. And you're going to have to go through those bumps in the road, let's call
Sure.
them, to get there. And the bumps in the road are actually in a way they're good things, because if you
Right.
didn't have those bumps in the road, you would not be here.
Right. And it builds character, and it helps you to learn and grow. And, certainly I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. And I'm sure you weren't, or you're not the same person you were 20 years ago. And,
Yeah.
we learn and we grow.
Yeah.
All right. So my next question is, what's a movie or show you absolutely love?
My
Right off the top of your head.
My favorite movie of all time, and I actually reference it a lot with my team, and I think they're a little annoyed with me by now, but I was born in the '80s, so it's Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yeah, I always, I
That's a
always,
classic. Yeah.
oh man, I always talk about it, and I always bring it up, and my wife's definitely sick of it. But actually, recently, really funny, we got an order from Paramount for Teen Wolf,
Okay.
which was like another movie that, and my wife says I've never talked about it, but after I got the order, I'm like, you don't know that Teen Wolf is my favorite movie? Like, how did I not mention that? Like, I was really into Teen. I'm basically a Michael J. Fox guy. Like, I was everything Michael
Apparently,
J.
yeah.
Fox. So
Yeah, both of those movies I love. Of course, I'm a guy. I was born in the '70s. I saw Back to the Future in the theaters probably 10 times.
man,
Love that movie. Still,
those
it's
were the
so
days.
quotable.
Those were the days when going to the movie theater was like the biggest
It
adventure of your
was.
life. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
my
as a
kids
teen.
they'll never get that. They don't
No,
get
I
it.
know. I know. It's all about home
It hurts me.
entertainment.
It hurts me. I'm like, really? You're not excited about the theater? They're like, Dad, I can get it on demand. Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
know. It's a different world that we live in today,
Yeah,
Sam. Completely different.
can't
All
believe it.
right, so I have one last question for you. Who will win Super Bowl 57?
Ooh, that's a good question. And we spoke about that a little earlier.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it a lot. My heart was broken on Sunday when the Bills lost. I used to be a season ticket holder to the Bills up until I got married, and my season tickets conveniently disappeared because driving 3 hours to a Bills game from Toronto when you get married is not a
Oh,
thing
wow.
you do anymore.
Yeah.
But the way it works is that every year you move closer to the 50-yard line. And my son, he's 9, he's a big Bills fan. So I was like, I was on the 30. So how many more years to the 50? So
Hmm.
I think I'm going with It's a tough call, but I think I'm going with San Francisco.
Oh,
Yeah, I
ooh,
love their defense, and they're just such a good team. I'm a little bit weary about Brock Purdy, but I don't know. I think I'm going
yeah.
with San Francisco. Who are you going with?
I got to go with the Eagles. I may be representing Philadelphia from where I am, but I'm a Jets fan. But as a Jets fan who, my team hasn't made the playoffs in I think 10, 12 years or something like that. I have to go with the home team. I just don't see any flaws in that team right now.
Yeah,
They dismantled the Giants over the weekend. Uh, Jalen Hurts is just a different quarterback. I mean, he's like Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is injured. You don't
yeah,
know how bad his high ankle sprain is. I got to go with the Eagles right now. I think the
yeah.
Eagles. This is gonna be a tough game for the Eagles this week. I think San
They're
Francisco.
flying high. It's almost like they blew out the Giants by so much that it almost is like not good because it's like now you're
Yeah,
going into a game with really good defense and I don't know. That was a good. They played really well. They look like the favorite to go all the way. It's going to be. I think it's going to be both games. Actually, I think they're going to be really good games. I think we can agree, everybody, that those are the top four teams.
yeah. I look the Bills. The Bills almost lost to the Dolphins in.
Yeah, they didn't look good in
They
either of those
didn't.
Dolphin games.
I think the Bills were better earlier in the season. Something happened to that team. I think there's a lack of chemistry. I think with
Yeah.
Stefan Diggs having issues with the way Josh Allen was passing it. I mean, I think there's some internal issues going on there. But
They didn't look very good on Sunday. It looked like they were playing in a week 4 game or something,
yeah, it
like
was not. It just wasn't very good. And look, nothing can't take away from the Bengals. They played really, really well. And I actually think the Bengals, who own the Chiefs right now, I think they're going to win again. And I think it's going to be
yeah.
Eagles, Bengals. I think it's going to be look, whoever wins the Super Bowl, like you said, will deserve it. I
You
think
really
it's a tough
realize
game.
how hard it is to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it is
Yeah,
it is impossible. I mean, it is.
for the Jets, it's hard
I
to
also
make the
think about
playoffs. So
it's unbelievable road they
yeah.
got there.
All right. So Sam, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Best way to get a hold of me, Sam at SocratesCustom.com. That's sock rates. That's how people pronounce it sometimes. Custom.com. Another way, just go to our website, SocratesCustom.com. Reach out to us over there. We're definitely on social media, as we discussed. LinkedIn, very, very present there. Instagram at Socrates Custom. We're on Twitter. So that definitely many, many ways to reach out. Would love to hear from you, everybody. Anybody who just wants to talk stocks or anything else, definitely reach out. And we'd love to discuss with you.
Awesome, Sam. Thanks again for your time today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
For Sam, I'm Vinny. We'll see you next time on the Social Angle.